Amidst the chorus of praise, Michael stood out from the crowd. Just as he was about to leave, I grabbed him.
Michael. It's been so long. I never expected to see you here. What you did just now, I couldn't have imagined it was you. It's so unlike your usual style.
He looked a bit thinner, his complexion slightly dull, but his eyes were bright and full of life, as if he had found his soul. Michael used to be a night owl, enjoying himself at night and sleeping during the day. His parents were business people, and he wasn't in a hurry to find a job. We had graduated from college 3 years ago. He had spent those 3 years living freely and unrestrained.
Look at my muscles. Do you think I'm afraid of him? Come on, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's find a restaurant and sit down for a while.
He flexed his arm to show off his physique, but his thin arms were no different from a woman's. I noticed that he had a few small cuts on his body, but they were not serious and would heal on their own without stitches. Usually, we would go to well-decorated restaurants. This time, however, he chose a small, shabby eatery that we wouldn't have considered before.
It's hard for my parents to earn money. Spending should be moderate.
Where have you been and what have you been doing these past few months?
He played dumb and refused to talk about it. But I had a feeling that he was hiding something from me. He, who used to love drinking, now drank soda with me.
From now on, I should learn from you and be a diligent worker.
He looked serious, not like he was joking. Before graduation, I usually worked part-time during the summer holidays. He had joined me a few times but always quit halfway through.
Which boss isn't like that? Your parents are bosses too. Do they treat their employees like family?
Working is about earning that hard-earned money, which I called humiliation money. I had envied Michael's life. He was born into wealth, always having what he wanted, unlike me, an ordinary person who had to endure hardships before enjoying a meal. For Michael, hardship was like medicine. To me, it was a cure for poverty. When I argued back, he would laugh at me foolishly until the topic was dropped.
You need to control your temper. Once you step out of the house, no one will pamper us.
He nodded politely, looking very humble.
I found a sales job outside my parents' company, out of necessity.
He spoke earnestly about his resignation, and I listened with a heavy heart. This was probably another grand attempt to experience life. If he failed, he would have to go back and inherit his family's fortune. I wished my life had such a script, but fate had other plans. A worker's soul is perhaps what Michael now desperately wants. The next day, Michael asked me to go for a morning run with him. We met at the entrance of a nearby park. I arrived 5 minutes early, only to find he was already there.
I hate waiting for people, even for a second.
But he also liked to be late, and how late he would be depended on fate. This time, he surprised me twice. I could hardly believe my eyes. We started warming up by walking briskly, and once our joints were ready, we picked up the pace.
What? Not used to seeing me this early?
I'm starting to wonder if you're really Michael or someone pretending to be him. I looked him up and down and noticed he seemed a bit thinner than yesterday. He grinned mischievously and whispered something in my ear. I pushed him away, certain that this was indeed the real Michael. Only he knew about that embarrassing incident. I considered myself a very strong boy. When my college girlfriend broke up with me, I couldn't help but cry. That night, I hid on a small hill behind the school and wept. The dormitory locked its doors at midnight, so I didn't plan to go back and decided to sleep on the hill.
A real man should be magnanimous and let go of emotions.
I agreed and didn't want to sacrifice my health over a relationship. We returned to the dormitory and used some money to convince the dorm supervisor to let us in. As we ran, Michael started to struggle. I slowed down, noticing he couldn't keep up with the fast pace but was stubbornly pushing himself.
Not bad. You've made great progress. It seems your 3-month disappearance wasn't in vain. But remember, persistence is key. Don't rush it. Let's call it a day.
I patted his shoulder and watched his heaving chest.
I can't keep up with you in running, but I'll practice more and eventually surpass you.
All right, when you surpass me, I'll treat you to breakfast today since I won.
No, I insist on treating you.
Seeing my determination, he agreed and sat quietly by the food stall, waiting for me. While I was in line, I noticed his face was pale, probably from the fast run and lack of oxygen. I started to feel guilty, thinking I shouldn't have run so fast. Michael's health had been an issue since I knew him. Back in elementary school, he never participated in the morning and afternoon exercises. Whenever we did them, he would stand by the window, his envious eyes following us until we finished, then he would return to his seat.
I wish I could join you guys, he would say, his eyes never leaving the playground.
Even on regular duty rosters, his name was never there. During the weekly class cleanup, it seemed like he had nothing to do with it. He would just leave, and sometimes I secretly envied how nice it would be to be a child with health issues, easily avoiding any physical labor. Initially, I got close to him because I sat behind him. When we had nothing to do, we would joke around with harmless banter. Over time, I noticed something. He never truly smiled.
Hey Michael, why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field.
He forced a smile at my jokes. When he wasn't smiling, his face looked gloomy, as if a huge weight was pressing on his heart. I disliked that expression, so I would secretly learn jokes from other books to make him happy. His solitary nature meant he had few friends. Perhaps other classmates felt that his special treatment made him hard to approach. I became his only friend. One rainy day, I didn't bring an umbrella. He offered to take me home. I agreed because he was always picked up and dropped off by car.
Hey, I'll give you a ride. My dad's picking me up in the car.
Such treatment was rare in our school. I wanted to experience what it felt like to ride in a car. Sitting in the car, listening to Michael talk with his father, every word was filled with enviable fatherly love.
Dad, this is my friend. Can you believe he didn't bring an umbrella today?
Nice to meet you. You're always welcome to ride with us.
Unlike me, without a DNA test, people might think I was adopted. His real father and my distant father formed a stark contrast. As I was about to get off the car, Michael tried to give me a large bag of snacks his father had bought for him.
Take these snacks. My dad bought too many.
Thanks, but I can't accept them.
Although my family wasn't wealthy, my father taught me to live with dignity. Seeing that I wouldn't accept, he held onto my arm, not letting me go.
Please, just take them. I insist.
Seeing him being persistent, I had no choice but to accept the snacks. Later, the school organized a unified experience, but Michael was absent again. He told me later that his family took him for a full-body checkup every month.
They worry too much. I'm just like everyone else, except for the lack of activity.
One day during class, he suddenly jumped up from his seat, pointing at an insect on the wall.
Look! A mosquito! Quick, quick, kill it!
Michael's face was flushed, his chest heaving rapidly, like an alien just arriving on Earth.
Don't be afraid. It's a non-biting midge. It only drinks plant juices. If you're still scared, you can switch seats with another student.
I had the privilege of visiting Michael's home. It was spotless, and even near the entrance, there were no insects to be found. A 3-story villa, walking around felt like soaring through a world. Thinking about my family squeezed into a small apartment of less than 50 square meters, it truly defined the word compact. But thinking about it, I wasn't envious. I had something Michael could never have: a healthy body. No one is perfect, everyone is born with an unchangeable flaw or deficiency. Michael and I were having breakfast by the roadside when our long dormant college group chat buzzed with new messages.
Hey everyone, it's John. I'm organizing a reunion. Hope you all can join.
Naturally, both of us signed up. On the day of the reunion, Michael wore a well-fitted suit, and his hair gel shone under the sunlight.
Michael, you look sharp today.
Thanks, I thought I'd make an effort.
I stuck to my usual casual hoodie, comfortable and practical. The venue was a banquet hall in a star-rated hotel, capable of accommodating dozens of people at once.
Hey there. Long time no see.
I warmly greeted many classmates I hadn't seen since graduation, chatting about recent events and work. Compared to before, Michael had become more outgoing but still wasn't very good at socializing. He sat in a corner, quietly playing on his phone. At that moment, a girl sat down in the empty seat next to him. She wore a pink dress with a cinched waist, her slightly curled hair draped over her shoulders, exuding a familiar fragrance.
Jessica? Is it really you?
Yes, it's me. Are you surprised? It's only a 2-hour train ride from where I live.
Jessica was a girl who had pursued Michael in college but was heartlessly rejected. Despite her excellent character and academics, Michael had never been interested. Instead, he dated girls who were flamboyant and open-minded.
I saw Michael pulling Jessica out of the hall. They talked in a corner for a long time. Judging by their emotions, it didn't seem pleasant. When I caught up, Jessica was already crying heavily, and Michael was holding her with one hand and wiping her tears with the other.
I hope she will be happy in the future. What do you think?
I didn't say anything, just gave him a heavy pat on the shoulder. In that moment, I saw the hidden tears in his eyes. It turned out he had been holding back all along. Maybe rejecting Jessica also brought him immense pain, for reasons unknown to me. After a joyful event, we heard heartbreaking news from our university. Mr. Johnson had passed away from a heart attack. We were quite surprised to hear this.
Can you believe it? Mr. Johnson was about our age, only a few years older.
As our advisor, he was full of energy, always laughing, joking, and playing basketball with Michael and me. But now, he was gone, leaving behind a family burdened by financial stress.
We should visit Mr. Johnson's home privately, without making it public.
That night, we chose a rainy day for our visit, hoping to avoid others. John knocked on the door first.
Thank you for coming. It's been tough.
Inside, we placed fruits and personal tokens on the table, along with 3 red envelopes of different sizes. Mrs. Johnson recognized us and wasn't surprised to see us.
I regret not waiting until our finances were more stable before having children. It put too much pressure on him.
She knelt and cried uncontrollably. We took turns comforting her until she promised to raise her children well. John had personal matters and left first. Only Michael and I strolled slowly on the road.
Hey, why are you so quiet today? You usually talk a lot.
I waved my hand, feeling a mix of emotions. Michael suggested a bike ride in the countryside.
How about we go cycling tomorrow? It's good for health.
The next morning, he was already at the agreed meeting point. With a brand new mountain bike, a fitted sports outfit, and a secure helmet, he looked just like a young apprentice mountain biker.
Let's go. Lead the way.
He saw me and waved his hand forward, commanding me to move at full speed. I understood and pedaled faster. At first, I took advantage of my strength, gaining a bit of an edge. But soon after, he quietly used the technology, utilizing the gear shift to surpass me by a margin. Poor me, with my ordinary mountain bike, had no extra technological support. This was probably the first time Michael and I rode into the mountains. He used to be very concerned about appearances, always needing a luxury car to travel far, never losing face no matter where he went. This time, he finally shed the cloak of vanity, returning to simplicity in the wild mountains.
This feels liberating, doesn't it?
Our trip was completely spontaneous, with no set plan. so we didn't really know where we were heading. What we could confirm was that the road was sloping upwards, and we were climbing. He gradually slowed down until he was pushing the bike on foot. With a bulging backpack on his back, it seemed he had prepared quite a bit for this outing. After riding for 2 or 3 hours, we were both a bit tired. We parked our bikes by the roadside, sat down, and drank water to rest.
Look over there, an old man with a tricycle.
Our eyes simultaneously focused on an old man pedaling a tricycle uphill not far away. His skinny body was carrying a load of potatoes. I was worried that if he lost control of the handlebars, the whole tricycle would flip over. As expected, the unexpected happened naturally. The hot weather and sweaty hands caused the old man to fall from his seat. The flimsy tricycle, weighed down by the heavy potatoes, flipped over, and the potatoes rolled down the slope.
Let's help him.
Michael looked at me, and I shook my head. The next second, he ran up and helped the old man up from the ground. I followed, signaling with my eyes for him not to meddle. There were no cameras here, and if we were falsely accused, we wouldn't be able to clear our names. We could only rely on the old man's conscience. Today, we were lucky. Together, we picked up the scattered potatoes and placed them back on the tricycle. The old man was very grateful and wanted to give us a few pounds of potatoes.
Thank you so much. Please take some potatoes.
No need, sir. We're happy to help.
We appreciated his kindness and helped him push the tricycle back home. Michael was sweating profusely, but his face wore a rare smile. He used to be indifferent to such things. In his world, only he mattered.
This place has no cameras. If I weren't here and you helped him up, what if he said you hit him and tried to extort you?
Extort me? Extort me. I have money to pay, haha. But think about it, if we didn't help and the old man had a health issue and passed away, that would be a life loss. What's more important, money or life? I think saving a life is more important, don't you?
I was speechless at Michael's question, and his change surprised me. Standing with him in the sunlight, I felt a bit dark inside. That tricycle full of potatoes must have weighed at least 200 pounds. It exhausted both of us, so we found a shady spot by a tree near the river to set up camp and rest. We had a large piece of coarse cloth for the two of us to rest on. We prepared a nutritious lunch and delicious juice. We each placed our items on the cloth.
You were in for a treat today. I made all these dishes.
I looked up at him and saw the exquisite lunchbox he had prepared. The food was colorful and looked quite appealing. I was curious about the taste, so I picked up a piece of vegetable. Put. I spat it all out on the ground. What did you put in this? Why is it so bitter?
It's supposed to be bitter. I added bitter melon. I read that it helps reduce internal heat and promotes health. Eating it every day can even prolong life.
Don't listen to those so-called experts. They probably don't eat these disgusting fruits and vegetables themselves. I rolled my eyes at him and started eating the roast chicken and duck I had brought. He smiled, lay down on the coarse cloth, and took out a thick book from his bag to read. I leaned over to take a closer look at the title, Introduction to Business Management. Was this a sign of him following in his father's footsteps?
After passing the MBA exam, I plan to work for a large company. I won't limit myself to my current knowledge, but will engage in related industries. Standing tall allows one to see far. A large platform can broaden one's horizons and accelerate progress.
I was somewhat captivated by his words, but it wasn't the allure of a grand vision. I believed in his transformation and that his dreams could come true. Michael had started reading in college. The difference was that when he needed to study in college, he read novels of various fantasy genres. He would often stay up late reading, dreaming of soaring through the sky and flying on a sword. Only before exams would he buckle down and study. Even so, my exam scores were only slightly higher than his. I envied his talent and intelligence, which were probably inherited. His father started a business before he was 20, without much formal education. Through hard work and experience, he gradually mastered a skill and built a business from scratch. This trait was fully inherited by Michael. Some people achieve more with minimal effort compared to ordinary folks. My parents were typical workers, with brains that were mostly ornamental. They relied on their physical strength the most. From my parents, I could hardly draw any nutrients to help me grow. All I had were basic necessities and a simple life. But I was content. They were always there to accompany me, laughing and playing with me. In spring, they took me kite flying, in summer, they took me fishing and swimming. Michael's parents were successful but very busy, rarely having time to spend with him. In their large mansion, there was always a persistent silence. This gradually made him averse to noise and socializing. Michael's every move was an attempt to break free from his past environment and become a different person. He said that his previous indulgent life had made him miss many beautiful sights. Now, he wanted to spread his wings and fly, believing that only in the sky could he see more of the beautiful world. In the following half-month, Michael and I trained together every morning. Strangely, his complexion worsened day by day.
I don't feel right. My body is not responding well.
He stopped the morning runs with me to focus on his studies. Occasionally, he would play basketball, swim, or do some light exercises.
I'm moving from a villa to an ordinary neighborhood. The family business is struggling.
It sounded sad, but Michael was overjoyed.
This is my chance to prove myself. For the past 20 years, I lived a quality life created by my parents. Now, it's my turn to create one for them.
I was surprised by his words. He proudly looked into the distance, walking forward step by step. Soon after, Michael chuckled.
Although the company went bankrupt, we saved enough for me to live comfortably.
I thought to myself, this was a foolproof life plan. That day, Michael took me to see his new home. It was modest compared to the villa. We didn't stay for dinner but went out to find a restaurant. Suddenly, a stray dog jumped out of the bushes ahead, bleeding.
I need to take it to the pet hospital quickly.
I was stunned. He picked up the dog and took a taxi to the nearest hospital. Fortunately, we found it in time. After the doctor's treatment, the stray dog was out of danger. Michael's tense expression finally relaxed. I couldn't believe this was the Michael I knew. It was like he had become a different person. Today is a good day. Michael is going to take the annual MBA certification exam. He even asked me to take a day off to accompany him to this very important moment. I waited at the entrance of the exam center, watching the clock as there was still half an hour before the exam ended. Waiting was indeed torturous. My mood gradually became impatient. Just then, an unexpected figure appeared at the entrance.
I'm out!
He looked around for cars and then ran over.
How about that? I was fast, right? These questions seemed tailor-made for me. There wasn't a single one I couldn't answer.
He suddenly put his arm around my shoulder and tried to trip me. Just as I was about to retaliate, Michael collapsed to the ground, unconscious. A kind passerby quickly dialed 911. I sat next to him in the ambulance, gently touching his cold hand. I anxiously asked the doctor sitting opposite.
What's wrong with him?
The doctor didn't answer me. The specific situation could only be determined after a hospital examination. Touching his cold hand, I suddenly had a bad premonition. Especially with his lips gradually turning purple, it was not a good sign. Sure enough, after a while of examination, a critical condition notice was issued. He needed immediate surgery, but I wasn't Michael's relative and couldn't sign the consent form. I could only get his parents' consent over the phone and sign on their behalf. The surgery began shortly after. I waited outside, no longer feeling the impatience I had outside the exam center. I didn't know how long I waited. Michael's parents arrived at the hospital and told me to go home quickly.
The surgery could take a long time, and we don't want it to affect your work tomorrow. We'll inform you of the situation by phone.
Just then, the doctor came out of the operating room.
Michael's condition is very bad. We can only try our best to save his life. If he doesn't make it, there is nothing more we can do, as the survival rate for this disease is very low.
This disease? A huge question mark popped into my head. Under my questioning, his father revealed the truth.
Michael was born with a congenital, incurable genetic disease. Females can carry it but show no symptoms. His maternal grandfather also passed away early because of this genetic disease. 3 months ago, Michael's condition suddenly worsened dramatically. He had to go abroad to seek treatment from renowned doctors, but it didn't yield good results. This genetic disease slowly torments the body until...
Michael's mother quietly sat aside, and I could see her deep guilt, bringing both happiness and pain into this world. Thinking back to Jessica crying in Michael's arms, it was because she knew the specifics of his condition. Michael didn't want to burden a woman who could have a happy future because of his health. I sobbed silently. Now was not the time to cry. I couldn't leave. This might be my last chance to say goodbye to him. So, the 3 of us waited in separate quiet corners for the surgery to end. After 2 rounds of relentless efforts by the chief surgeon, the surgery was finally completed in the early morning. Michael's life was saved, but he couldn't speak temporarily. A few days later, I visited him in the hospital. His face had a bit of color, and he was staring out the window, like a caged bird longing for freedom.
Hey! Come in, I've been waiting for you.
He sat up from the bed with a smile, making space and patting the wrinkles on the bed.
I can't be discharged yet. I need another surgery in a week. If it succeeds, my life can continue. If it fails, well...
There was no trace of fear on Michael's face. He was happy, sunny, brave, and his body was filled with all kinds of radiant energy.
Why did you hide it from me? If I had known, I wouldn't have taken you running or doing other exercises.
Because I want to be a normal person. I don't want to live that isolated life I had as a child.
His smile carried a bit of grievance, and there were tiny tears at the corners of his eyes.
People who don't exercise aren't normal. Nowadays, life is so fast-paced, how many people really exercise?
He suddenly punched me in the chest. It was more startling than painful.
When I get better, let's learn boxing together, so I can protect you too.
All right, let's wait for your recovery.
But somehow, I suddenly had a lot to say but couldn't express it. The day of Michael's next surgery might very well be the day we part ways forever. Thinking of these sorrowful things, my tears could no longer be held back, streaming down my face.
Do you know? People with my condition are often called Yellow Springs guests. Most of them pass away in their early 20s. To live until now, I already feel very lucky. What more could I want? In these 3 months, I've thought a lot. Rather than living a dark and fallen life, I'd rather live happily like a normal person. No matter what happens in the future, I've experienced the joy of life, and I think it's worth it. That's enough.
He expressed a sad sentiment with a joyful heart. I was deeply moved, feeling proud to have such a special friend. A week later, Michael's surgery proceeded as scheduled. I waited outside with Michael's parents, the surgery time still undetermined. No matter how long it took, I would persist in waiting. Originally feeling the weight of life, thinking about his past suddenly made me feel relieved. Compared to Michael's life, my mortgage and future life pressures were insignificant. At least heaven granted me a healthy body to withstand and cope with life's ups and downs. The previous hardships were no longer hardships, compared to those facing greater difficulties, they were merely feigned sweetness. I sincerely looked at the operating room, hoping to walk the future path of life with Michael again. After a long time, I unknowingly fell asleep. In my dream, I saw someone wearing the exact same clothes as Michael. He was happily running in front of me, with with Jessica following behind. The two of them were playing and laughing in a place full of flowers and grass, living a happy life.
The end.